the Ministry of Youth Sports and the Ministry of Youth Sports and Culture, rather, but in particular the Division of Youth's COVID-19 workshop. It is a pleasure to be here and happy to see all of you. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It would be great to see some of your faces. Since you can see mine, I would really like that. So we're briefly going to discuss, some of it may be a bit repetitive for us, but just bear with us. We thought that it would be best that we communicate with you all our COVID-19 protocols as a ministry. And under our theme, Resilient Youth, re-emergence, we thought that it would be perfect now in this COVID-19 environment to touch bases with you and, like I said, give you our protocols and, of course, let you know what's been happening with the COVID-19 vaccine, how it is applicable to you or how you can have access to it, and a few more objectives that we'll briefly discuss. So we're recording, so we don't have to wait on anybody else. We will get started and we'll be on our way. Again, welcome to all of you. Everyone can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So again, like I said, our theme, I didn't think I said it correctly in the beginning, our theme for this National Youth Year, I should say, is Resilient Youth, Re-Engineered for Re-Emergence. And we will be discussing re-energizing, re-emerging, and re-engaging our young people as youth leaders and youth organizations at large. It has been difficult, as we all know, as it relates to anything virtual. And virtual learning and of course virtual programs, it's been difficult for young people to adjust and adapt, and it's been a bit stressful for us as adults as well. So we're going to take this time and just go over briefly the objectives of this evening's session. So the objectives are: one, to present youth leaders and youth organizations with the COVID-19 guidelines of the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Culture; to discuss the effects of the global pandemic on our mental health; to explore coping skills and ways to alleviate stressors during the COVID-19 pandemic; to explore resilience and how we can apply it to our day-to-day lives; and to discuss the COVID shield or the AstraZeneca vaccine, which is available in the Bahamas, and dispel the myths that are around. So before I begin, I just want to say welcome to all of you who are just joining us, and to the Office of the Division of Youth that are here. I'll just briefly announce who is here. From what I can see, Miss Kelly Brathwaite, Youth Officer, Miss Ingrid Says-DeVoe, and Miss Lauren Hasty. They are joining us, and we just want to welcome you all and thank you for giving us your Monday evening. So the COVID-19 re-engagement preparedness, you are to ensure that healthy hygiene practices are in place always. Hand washing and covering up coughs and sneezes, of course. Some of this may be repetitive because we have been hearing it for more than a year now, but please bear with us. Use of face coverings, i.e. masks and shields, or both, because of the various strands or strains that are available now. And safe physical distancing availability, 3 to 6 feet apart. So this means that when you are re-engaging your young people, whether it be outside or inside, I think only outside is available to an extent now, unless you are vaccinated fully, you are to be 3 to 6 feet apart, of course. So you must have a space that can accommodate being 3 to 6 feet apart. You must ensure that you clean and disinfect all frequently touched surfaces daily. I would even go as far to say 2 to 3 times daily, like the bathroom knobs, the door knobs, and any frequently touched surfaces. You are to limit group activities as much as you can. Limit sharing toys, objects, belongings, supplies, equipment for those that are banned, that are in charge of the bans. Of course, that would be all of the instruments. And you must treat and adhere to all health and safety COVID-19 protocols. So I would recommend that before you re-engage your young people and start face-to-face meetings, it would be nice if you would train your staff or your mentors beforehand. So monitoring and evaluation. Number one, develop and implement procedures to check for signs and symptoms in participants, employees, and volunteers daily upon arrival, including temperature checks and symptom monitoring. So there must be something in place at the beginning of the day where you, maybe a checklist, maybe a waiver in particular too, to make sure that you are protected against any issues should they occur. And you must encourage anyone who is sick to stay at home. For any of you who are having camps this summer, this is important. These steps to monitoring and evaluating your employees, your volunteers, your participants, and your members. You must plan for participants or employees or volunteers if they get sick. So you must have a backup plan always. If one cannot make it, you should have someone else on standby. You should regularly communicate and monitor the developments with government officials, employees, and families regarding cases, exposures, and updates to policies and procedures. As we have seen today, the Prime Minister would have announced a curfew extended to 11 p.m. for Nassau and 12 p.m. for Grand Bahama. With that being said, we are making headway into possibly opening up, I guess, as much as we can. So we're making our steps to getting where we should be. So that means we should keep up and monitor the upcoming developments in the near future. And then we should monitor and evaluate participants, employees, and volunteer absences and have substitutes available or allow flexible scheduling. So for those of you who are running camps, this means that though you may have two employees, or you may have two people that are in charge of the camp, there should be a backup in case there is some exposure or someone is reported sick. There should be a substitute and there should be flexible scheduling. Now, monitor and evaluate. This is very important. Sometimes we know that not all of us are as sincere as we should be. Some are nonchalant and still believe that COVID-19 does not exist and it's a myth. So not everyone will report that they are not feeling well. If someone is missing for 2 days, perhaps you should check in on your camper or your student or your member of your organization to see just what is happening and why they are absent. So the COVID-19 safety kit. Every youth organization and camp should possess a COVID-19 safety kit, which should be adequately, always stocked. The following items must be included in the COVID-19 safety kit. This is in addition to your first aid kit, of course, mask and face shields. Of course, everyone should wear a mask, but in the event that something happens, especially with the babies, the younger children, you will have an extra mask if it pops or if it gets dirty, so on and so forth. Gloves, hand soap, hand sanitizers, disinfectant wipes, hand sanitizing stations, no touch trash cans, and handheld thermal scanners, the basics. So the coronavirus or the COVID-19 global pandemic, as we have heard for the last, I would say, 18 months or 16 months, somewhere along there. So this has significantly shifted the way we do things, as we all know. From school to church to funerals and weddings and things that we have known to be so normal are now abnormal in the way we do things. And it has been an uncomfortable situation and an uncomfortable journey. But like I said, we are getting there and we are seeing that we are opening slowly but surely. But amidst this pandemic, we have always been and we are to be a resilient people. So there is no easy way through this crisis, but building coping skills and resilience will help us work through the emotional upheaval triggered by COVID-19. So just a little quote: on the other side of a storm is that strength that comes from having navigated through it. Raise your sail and begin. We know, like I said, that this has been a journey for us all. For me in particular, as an officer of the Division of Youth, when we got the orders to lock down and all of the other orders to limit social gatherings and then eventually cease with social gatherings, they were no longer allowed. I was in the middle of a fresh start program at the Division of Youth. And the component that we were actually moving on to was the internship component, which means that this was not possible, obviously. And my young people were at a disadvantage and subsequently could not continue their internship. So with that being said, we had to find a way to end the program and still celebrate them as best as we can in the midst of the chaos. We had to navigate and raise our sail and begin the best way we knew, or finish strong, I should say. So we're going to speak briefly about resilience. I'm going to touch on it briefly, and then we're going to have a professional, a clinical psychologist, who's going to speak a little bit more about COVID fatigue and how we can better adapt or manage our stressors in a COVID-19 environment. So resilience, what is resilience? Resilience is knowing how to cope despite setbacks, barriers, or limited resources. Resilience is a measure of how much you want something and how much you are willing and able to achieve it. It involves overcoming obstacles to get it, and it has a lot to do with your emotional strength. The 6 domains of resilience. We have vision, which is purpose, goals, and congruence. Composure, we must regulate our emotions. We must be careful of interpretation bias, and we must remain calm and in control at all times as best as we know how. Reasoning, we must apply our problem-solving skills. We must be resourceful and be able to compromise, and we must anticipate and plan always. Amidst the COVID-19 pandemic, it has been rough, like I said, but in the midst of it, we have anticipated more lockdowns, unfortunately, and less restrictions. So we had to plan accordingly, which means we switched to virtual and made it as engaging as we can for our young people. And I think we did a pretty good job as youth leaders and youth organizations. So you are to be commended for that. Health, in the midst of all of what has been going on, you must have good nutrition, sleep, and exercise. Self-care is very important. We'll talk about that briefly. You cannot pour from an empty cup, and you will be no good to your mentees and your youth leaders or your young people as youth leaders if you are not in a position to pour into them. So health is very important. Tenacity, you must be persistent, realistic, but optimistic, and you must be able to bounce back in the midst of. And then collaboration, of course. You must have support networks, social context, and you must manage your perceptions. So the main factors contributing to resilience. You must have a good support system, whether it be other youth leaders within organizations, mentors, friends, the division of youth staff, pastors, whatever it looks like to you. Having a good support system is very important in order to be resilient. You must maintain positive relationships and perhaps get rid of the ones that are stressful. You must have a good self-image and a positive attitude. You must have the capacity to make realistic plans, not pie in the sky ideas or putting your basket higher than you can reach. It's very important at a time like this. We're going from a place where we were able to do nothing to being able to do something, so a little goes a long way. You must be able to carry out those plans. So of course, when we think about goals, we think about SMART goals. They must be specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time sensitive. And we have to make sure that these are things that are attainable. We must be able to achieve these goals. Being able to effectively manage your feelings and impulses in a healthy manner. It becomes frustrating at times with all that has been going on, but we must be able to maintain our feelings, manage our emotions, and be in control always, which was one of the 6 components of resilience. We must have good communication skills, and we must have confidence in our own strengths and abilities. Many of us have teams within our organizations, but it's very important that we have confidence in our own strengths and our own abilities to avoid burnout of other employees and other workers. And then having good problem-solving skills. We know tensions are high, and issues arise, but we must be able to be good problem solvers in the midst of what is happening around the world. And then we have ways to build resilience. When we think about resilience, we think about words like motivate, persistence, strength, vision, optimism, growth, agility, positivity, teamwork, optimism. We spoke about some of these: power, reaction, flexibility, vision, endurance, attitude. So, ways to build resilience. One, we must make connections. Good relationships with close family members, friends, or others are important. We started to speak about this briefly earlier on with managing or making or networking rather, and having a good support system. Accepting help and support from those who care about you and will listen to you strengthens resilience. It's not a time to be prideful. As youth leaders, we must be able to lean on one another at a time like this in particular. Some people find that being active in civic groups, faith-based organizations, or other local groups provides social support and can help with reclaiming hope. And we must assist others in their time of need, as it can also benefit you as a helper. So like the Hebrews say, hand come, hand go. If you have something that you can donate to an organization, like if you have too many thermal scanners, maybe you can have a barter system and trade and perhaps get something from them, helping on each other. Number two, you must accept that change is a part of life. We all did not see this coming. In fact, I remember briefly telling my dad that this is something that is in China and it will never reach here. So we have nothing to be worried about. Not knowing that within another maybe 4 weeks, may even be an exaggeration, we were all going on lockdown. Our kids had to be pulled out of school. Our organizations came to a screeching halt, and things as we knew it was no longer what it was or what we knew it to be. So you must accept that change is a part of life. It has affected all of us, and not just our country, but countries all around the world and the world at large. So certain goals may no longer be attainable as a result of adverse situations, which means, like I said earlier, you are not to raise your basket higher than you can lift or you can reach. It's very important that you set goals that are realistic and achievable. You must accept circumstances that cannot be changed and know that it helps you to focus on circumstances that you can alter. So you must move toward your goals. Even if you have to take it in strides, you set a goal, you make a plan, you stick to it, you get to work, you reach the goal, and then you've made it. But you have to develop some realistic goals, like I said earlier, with the SMART goals acronym. You must do something regularly, even if it seems like a small accomplishment that enables you to move toward your goals. Instead of focusing on tasks that seem unachievable, ask yourself, what's one thing that I can accomplish today that helps me move in the direction I want to go? So we can even ask you as relates to an organization or camp. What is one thing that we can accomplish as a camp, as an organization, as a ministry that can help us? Because we are big on teamwork, move in the direction that we want to go. How can we accomplish our goals for our next organizational year or for our summer camp? How can we get these things done? You must nurture a positive view of yourself. Like I spoke about earlier, you must ensure that you enhance and you focus on your strengths and not so much your weaknesses. And it helps you to develop a confidence that you can do anything that you put your mind to. So you must develop confidence in your ability to solve problems and trust your instincts, because it helps to build resilience. And then keep things in perspective. Even when facing very painful events, you must try to consider the stressful situation in a broader context and keep a long-term perspective. You must avoid blowing the event out of proportion, because sometimes what it seems like isn't what it is. And perspective is important, but sometimes what it seems like isn't what it is, and it really isn't the end of the world. It may be uncomfortable and unpleasant, but there is a lesson to be learned. So there it is, that we practice optimism. Number 6, take care of yourself. I mentioned self-care briefly, and self-care looks different for many different people, but it is very important. Like I always tell young people that I would cater to or that I would be of service to, you cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot give and give and give of yourself and not pour back into yourself. So for me, self-care looks like a walk on the beach, singing karaoke, words of affirmation, meditation, and sleep. Sometimes I do journaling, but it looks different for different people. And we'll explore just a little bit of examples about self-care after this slide. So you must pay attention to your own needs and feelings because they are valid. You must engage in activities that only you enjoy and find relaxing, not what somebody else likes. It must work for you. It's all about you in this moment. You must exercise regularly. I know a lot of us have an issue or we struggle with this, like myself. Um, so we must, even if it takes a stroll around the park or taking the stairs instead of the elevator at work, which I try to do, but it's not been working out too well, then it kind of builds our stamina and makes us a little bit more active than we were. And then we must take care of ourselves because it keeps our minds and bodies primed to deal with situations that require resilience. We are better able to cope and manage stress. So types of self-care. Physical, you'll sleep, you can stretch, you can walk, you can exercise. Like I said, nutrition and yoga. Emotional, stress management, coping skills, compassion, therapy, journaling, and I would even add empathy in there. Social, you must set boundaries. Sometimes you just have to say, no, I am unable to do this at this point. Support systems, we spoke about this, is very important. You must try to remain positive at all times and see the silver lining. You must try to avoid social media if you can, but if you must, make sure that you find the good in social media or use it for the best and not the worst. And then communication, and then of course friends, and the good friends at that are really good when it comes to social self-care because they can bring us to a place of feeling free. And then spirituality or spiritual time alone, meditation, affirmation, prayer, just sitting down and observing nature can bring a sense of calmness and serenity. And then, of course, having a sacred space, however that looks for you and wherever that is. And then personal types of self-care is hobbies, creativity, goals, identity and authenticity, and space, safety, healthy environments must be stable and it should be clean. Financial, self-care, saving, budgeting, money management, paying bills, and setting boundaries. And then work time management, work boundaries, and of course, taking breaks. So the traits, qualities, and characteristics of a resilient person: viewing change as a challenge or opportunity, commitment, recognition of limits to control, engaging the support of others, close, secure attachment to others, recognition of limits to control, personal or collective goals, self-efficacy, strengthening effect of stress, realistic sense of control, ability to adapt to change, past successes, being able to celebrate them, patience, very important, action-oriented approach, being able to have a sense of humor in the midst of adversity, being very tolerant, and being optimistic and establishing a sense of faith. Resilience building. So you must recognize your signs of stress. Where do you tend to feel stress in your body? I tend to feel stress in my body, in my neck. I get migraines and I have tension in my shoulders. So then I know that I am under stress. Excuse me. And it would not be eustress, which is good stress. It would be distress. So my body's responding to stress. Sometimes we are in a place where we are stressed and we don't really know until our body responds. We think we're managing it well, but we're really not. So we must focus and recognize our signs, our personal signs of stress. And what are some of the bad habits you engage in when feeling stressed? Are they harmful to you? Are they beneficial to you? And then we must focus on building physical hardiness. What kind of small changes can you invest in to improve your health? Is it better sleep, better nutrition, hydration, exercise, etc.? And you should list one small, just for your reference, one small change that you can possibly make now to build physical hardiness. Is it better sleep? Is it eating better or eating healthier? Is it drinking more water? Is it exercise? Is it having a good self-talk? Anything that you think can build or that can build your physical hardiness, you can think of a small change you can make. And then increase positive emotions daily. Should identify your sources of humor or joy. What makes you happy? Try and focus on those things. Express gratitude. Visit someone or write a letter. List your accomplishments. Engage in meaningful activities. Notice what happened in your day that was meaningful on a regular basis. What kinds of activities did you find meaningful? And identify activities that put you in the flow. In other words, what things do you enjoy that will cause you to lose track of time in an already stressful environment? We're going to watch a short video on building resilience. Hope that you can hear it. And then we will welcome Dr. Richard Adderley. Can you hear it?
Sorry, no.
Okay, let me try. Okay. Okay, I think I got it now. Let's see.
Life happens.
Now?
Life happens. Resilience is the process of successfully bouncing back from stress, and it can be learned and developed in anyone. There will always be unexpected bumps in the road, but reframing challenges can make a big difference in how you face a situation. Try to stay flexible to life's inevitable surprises. Resilient people are not paralyzed by challenges. Instead, they work through the challenges and learn to make the best of the situation. Flexibility is an essential part of resilience, and sometimes you have to adapt to situations that you can't control. Accept that reality. Remain positive and focus your energy on things you can control. Try to view the situation in a matter-of-fact way and set reasonable goals. If you're getting overwhelmed, break the challenges down to small, manageable steps. Having a strong support network is a great way to get through life's challenges. Sharing your feelings with others allows you to release stress and brainstorm solutions, and a strong network can provide both emotional and logistical support in a crisis. Life happens, but you can learn to bounce back. For more information on building resilience in your workplace, visit ifebp.org/benefitstay.
Okay, so any thoughts on the video? Any comments, any questions before we bring on Dr. Richard Adderley? No questions? Okay, no comments on the video. Okay, great. One second. Okay, we're going to bring on Dr. Richard Adderley. He is a licensed clinical psychologist, and I have had the joy of him being my professor in undergrad, and he is going to speak on COVID and its effects on mental health and how we can cope in a stressful environment. So we're going to take this time and welcome Dr. Adderley. He has the floor now.
Okay, thank you so much, Shanda. I will, let me just say hi to everyone. I'll show my face now so that you can begin to see me. But I'm still seeing your face, Shanda. Can people see me?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
good. Okay. So now you've got, you've got the face. You can put the face with the voice, and I'll click back off right now. I've got all of my kids at home for the summer, and they are just using up my Wi-Fi bandwidth like nothing. They're streaming and watching this and watching that. So let me just make sure that we get through it. So I'm going to stop the video, and I'll continue to talk. Shandy, you make me feel kind of old because I taught you for such a long time, and you have blossomed into such an excellent young lady, and I am so proud of you. And so, guys, I want you to just put your hands together and give my favorite student a warm round of applause. She's a great girl. Okay, so Shanda, I've got 20 minutes, and let me share my screen with you. Okay, yeah, and let me begin pulling up. Okay, so everyone should be able to see my screen now.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, great. Okay, so let's go. Let's go as quickly as we can. So uncertainty. This is a scary word. I think we live in a world where we like to know, we like to be in control. And the past year and a half has been a year and a half of uncertainty. We just don't know what's going to happen. And whenever there's uncertainty, there's going to be fear. Because again, we like to know what's in control. Now, uncertainty is here because there's no reference case for the COVID-19 crisis in living memory. I'm so much older than any of you, but I do not remember a situation having gone through a similar situation like this in my lifetime. The scariest period that I've had was 9/11, and I don't think some of you were born, or if you were born, you were pretty young, but this happened back in 2001, so about 20 years ago, where there was uncertainty as to what was going to happen, whether or not we were going to be able to fly on airplanes again. But this uncertainty is creating a lot of panic because we just don't know what's going to happen. The current COVID pandemic has heightened uncertainty over the economy. We just don't know. Someone asked me today about jobs, and I'm saying to them, I'm not quite sure what's going to happen. I said, because if tourists are not coming, it means that money is not being generated here. How are we going to continue to pay bills? How are we going to continue to hold on to homes? How are we going to send our children off to school? All of these issues. Employment. Every time you turn around, more and more persons are losing jobs. Financial issues, relationships, and of course, physical and mental health. And I think all of us have been exposed to at least one or two families who have experienced the stresses of the COVID and also the physical death as a result of COVID. And so these are uncertain times. We're not quite sure what's going to happen. But as human beings, we crave security. And this is why there's so much tension. See, we want to feel safe. We want to have a sense of control over our lives and our well-being. But the problem is, because there's so much uncertainty, we cannot do so in the same manner that we did a couple of years back. So when we think in terms of COVID-19, there's fear, there's uncertainty, and this leaves us feeling stressed, anxious, and powerless over the directions of our lives. It leaves us feeling drained and emotionally, we feel trapped, and we're almost living in a downward sort of spiral. What if? There are no guarantees. And we keep thinking and imagining the worst case scenarios about what tomorrow would bring. When I talk to my clients, they talk about, Richard, I'm not sure what's going to happen. Richard, I don't even want to invest in this. Richard, I'm not even sure I'm going to be able to send my children off to school. Richard, I'm not even sure if I'm going to be able to live. Okay, it's so scary. It's so frightening. And this is the type of uncertainty that we're dealing with. So there are a couple of things that uncertainty leads us to. Uncertainty triggers off anxiety. Now, remember, anxiety has to do with a fear of the unknown. And so when we don't know what's going to happen, we become anxious. Think about the situation. When you become anxious because you, let's suppose that you had an exam and you had no idea what was going to be on the paper. You would be anxious. But if I had walked you through and I told you that these questions are going to be on this particular test, you would feel a little comfortable because you would know what to expect. So uncertainty triggers anxiety. Uncertainty also triggers fear, and uncertainty leads to stress. Okay? And worry and distress is not good for us, because when we're living with unknowns, it leads to constant worry and constant distress. And I think I heard Ms. Roberts talk about at the beginning. She spoke about eustress and distress. Okay, and distress is bad stress. And so we're talking about worrying and bad stress. So let's look at stress on the whole. Any change that you go through in life brings about stress. When we talk about change, we're talking about adjustment or shifting or transforming or transitioning or modification. Anything new that we have to go through will produce stress. Now, to get you to understand the emotional aspect of what you're going through with COVID, I want you to think in terms of 3 key areas. The first is what we call worry. Okay? So I want you to imagine that worry is a mother. Worry is a female. Worry is what happens when your mind dwells on negative thoughts, uncertain outcomes, and things that could go wrong. Think back to the last time you worried about something. Worrying is repetitious. Worrying is always negative. We can sit for hours and hours and hours and hours and just worry, or we call it fretting. And no wonder the Bible says to be anxious for nothing, or we're not supposed to be worried, because worrying takes its toll on us. The more you worry, the more negative you feel, the more hopeless you feel. And so I think back to my life when I sit and I worry, and I usually worry, and I think of all of the things that could go wrong. Worrying can be detrimental to you as a young person. So worrying tends to be repetitive, and it's also obsessive. When you start to worry, you continuously worry. Sometimes I sit there and my wife say, "What's wrong with you? What are you thinking about?" Okay. And I'm deep in thought, and that's what worrying does. Worrying, it's obsessive, it's compulsive, okay, and you just sit there and you dwell and you dwell and you dwell. The sad thing about it is that you're only thinking about things that could go wrong. Now, worrying happens in your mind. It's not a body thing. Worrying happens in your mind, so it's mental. But guess what? Worrying stimulates our brain. So why is it that we can't use the same brain patterns to think of solutions? And a couple of years ago, I tried that and I realized that it worked. The same brain systems that come into play for worrying can also be used to problem solve. And so I say to you, when you find yourself worrying, and thinking about all of the things that could possibly go wrong, why don't you use the same brain processes to think in terms of all of the possible things that you could do right? Why is it that you don't focus on how can you be creative and how can you be more solution driven? You see, worrying is a way for your brain to handle problems in order to keep you safe. So instead of worrying and thinking about a negative outcome, we should use our worrying to help us to problem solve and to keep us safe. Now, if worrying is mental and has to do with the mind, then stress is a physiological response. So worrying is a woman, stress is a man. Worrying is a mother, stress is a father. So stress is physiological. It's connected to an external event. Stressors are the things that produce stress in our lives. If we can begin to identify the stressors in our lives, then it could begin to help us to more effectively deal with stress issues. When we have chronic stress, that's stress that's ongoing for an extended period of time, it usually takes its toll on our bodies physiologically. So remember, worrying is a mind game, but stress is a physiological game. And this is why Shanda was indicating that she had headaches, she had backaches, she had neck, her neck. Okay, we begin to feel symptoms of stress in our bodies. And so we see things like digestive issues, like I'm gastrointestinal. So whenever I'm stressed out, I feel it in my stomach, I feel it in my bowels, okay? There's increased risk of heart disease. And then there's a weakening of the immune system. People who are stressed out continuously come down with colds and flus, and they seem to be susceptible to a lot of physiological issues. Stress takes its toll on the body. If we look at this stress curve, this is important because stress always involves a balance. If you live a life with no stress, then it's just as bad as if you've got too much stress. And so if you look at for optimal performance, you need the right amount of stress. It's like fine tuning a guitar. If you tighten the strings too tight, they're gonna pop. But if the strings are too loose, you're not gonna get any music. And so it's important that you learn that life involves stress. And everything that you do in life, you will experience some stress. But you've got to be careful of the amount of stress that you allow in your life. So here's a good example that I want us to think about. I want you to imagine your life as a bucket. What is it that you put into your bucket on a daily basis? Now, if you can operate with your bucket at half, you're doing well. A well, healthy person, a resilient person, as Shanda mentioned, is someone who can continuously deal on a day-to-day basis with the stress in their life. However, if it raises more than halfway through your bucket, then that means that you're in problems. And I want you to imagine this. Imagine getting up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, and then you flush the toilet, but instead of the water going down, it comes out of the tank. That is what happens when you are stressed out. Your system can no longer deal effectively with the situation, and everything begins to pour out. So look at what happens: anxiety, physical decline, your inability to maintain self-control, and then there are other consequences. All of these things happen when there's too much stress going into your bucket. But look at the right-hand side. Where is the stress coming from? Your ability to deal with the stress depends on your stressors. Know your stressors and know how to deal with them effectively. So what are some common stressors? The amount of work that you do, illness. Do people continuously give you negative feedback? Do you live in a conflicting home? Uncertainty, deadlines, money, financial worries. You have family issues, okay? Lack of sleep, conflicting priorities. All of these things are stressors. And I'm sure if you sit and you evaluate and assess your life, you will come up with some individual stressors that you experience. So this pandemic has been stressful because it's produced a lot of fear and it's produced a lot of worry. It's changed the way that we sleep and it's changed the way that we eat. I'll give you a personal example. During the first 6 months of the pandemic, I must have put on 15 pounds because I was a nervous wreck. And then I couldn't sleep. I would go to bed 11 o'clock and 1 o'clock. I'd wake up and I'd feel as if I'd been up I had slept the whole night. And then I would toss and turn. Why? Because there was so much uncertainty. What was happening with my children overseas? Would I still be able to make additional funds in order to pay their school fees? What would happen to my wife who works in an area where they're paid on commissions? As people lost their jobs, will I be able to pay my monthly mortgage? Okay, will the banks at some point come and say that they have to repossess my home? See, these are the kind of things that we think about, and they run through our minds all over. And this is the type of stress that many families have been experiencing in the last 18 months as a result of the pandemic. The pandemic stress has caused a worsening in chronic health problems, people with diabetes, people with asthma. They've been afraid to do stuff simply because I know that as a diabetic, if I go out there and I expose myself, or I contract the virus, the coronavirus, then that could be detrimental to my health. And then there's a worsening of mental health problems. Okay, so the emotions, having to deal with emotions, having to deal with loneliness, having to deal with self-isolation, all of these things, and being locked down, not being to be with friends, not being able to reach out to families. I've got an 84-year-old godmother who, every time I go there, I feel like crying because she's so lonely. She lives by herself. And this type of isolation has not worked for her advantage. No wonder we have a lot of people who have increased their use of tobacco and alcohol and other substances in order to just survive. So let's carefully look at it. So if worrying is the mother and stress is a father, they produce a child that's called anxiety. See, it's the coming together of stress and worry that causes us to be anxious. Anxiety takes worrying from the mother and stress from the father. And this is why when we are anxious mentally, and we are also anxious in our body. So anxiety comes about in a mind-body state of affair. And this is why people who experience panic attacks will talk about it's a mind issue, but they're also extremely nervous. You see, anxiety happens when we are dealing with a lot of worry and a lot of stress. Unlike stress, there's no threat. You see, anxiety is a response to a false alarm. So the problem is with anxiety doesn't do you, someone to mute, please. Yeah. Anxiety doesn't do you like stress, because anxiety is not a physiological thing per se. It's a response to a false alarm. It's a threat. And so we have to be very, 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 very on top of things to not allow ourselves to become overly anxious. Because when we become overly anxious, we're feeling it mentally, we're feeling it physiologically, but in essence, there's nothing really going on. So anxiety is the main symptom for panic disorder, for phobias, for post-traumatic stress disorder, and also for social anxiety disorders. Now, the other thing that I want us to touch on briefly is depression. Depression comes from the old Greek word to put down, okay? When we talk about depression, we're talking about feeling saddened, our spirits being low, we're feeling dispirited. Depression has quickly become, out of the pandemic, the #1 mental health concern. So yeah, we're talking about anxiety, yeah, we're talking about uncertainty, yeah, we're talking about being afraid, yeah, we're talking about being stressed out. But depression now leads the way, especially with folks in the workforce. There's no single cause for depression, and it can occur for a variety of reasons. And it has many different triggers. One of the biggest triggers is the social isolation. Because you got to remember, we are social beings. No man is an island. We love each other. And this is why as soon as a lockdown has been lifted, we get ourselves into problems again, because we gravitate towards each other. We want to be with each other. We want to be near. Any of you who drive down Bay Street, East Bay Street, the beaches and everything, will look and you would say to yourself, but I thought we're supposed to be maintaining social distancing. It's difficult. It's a challenge for us to remain apart. You know, even when you're mad with people, you have to remind yourself that you ain't supposed to be speaking to them. That is what we're talking about when we talk about social distancing. And so there's the depression, there's a picture of depression. Okay. Depression ruins our lives as individuals. It's a leading cause of disability worldwide. It prevents people from working and studying. Think about the last time that you were depressed or saddened and how that impacts your world. And this, one of the challenges that we have in mental health is that when people become depressed, the quickest thing that we need to do is to get them to open up and to begin to express. Because if you don't get people talking, they go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into a world of isolation, a world of loneliness. Depression damages physical health. It causes you to not be able to look after yourself. And one of the challenges is that the early signs of depression are not always readily identifiable. So one of the things that I want you to do is I want you to think and look around at your network. Who are the people who are just not what they used to be? Who are the people who you've noticed certain behavioral changes? Who are the people who, when you think of where they used to be, they no longer seem to be at that point? These are the people who are becoming withdrawn. These are the folks who are feeling isolated. I want you to reach out to these folks. I want you to engage them in conversations. I want you to talk to them, ask them what's happening. You see, because sometimes people will sit, depending on their personalities, and they will not talk. They will try to take it on. They will try to endure. But the key is that I think that we are all our brother's keepers, and it is extremely important that we reach out to folks. Okay? Okay. So I know my time is up, so let's wrap up quickly. So if you're feeling stressed or anxious about the COVID-19 pandemic, here are a couple of tips that I want you to think in terms about. So Shanda said, limit or avoid news coverage if it causes you more stress and anxiety. Well, you know, I've reached a point where I'm calling it pandemic fatigue. I'm sick and tired of this pandemic. I'm sick and tired of hearing about it. Okay. And so I'm at the point now where I can't even reach it. So I don't want to watch it anymore. I don't want to hear anything about it. Previously in 2019, I got to the same thing with Hurricane Dorian. If I had heard one more Dorian story, I think I would have just lost it. Okay. So we as individuals do reach this point. So what needs to happen? You have to protect yourself. You see, limit the amount of time that you spend watching it. Okay, try to keep up with new developments, but don't sit and just listen day in, day out to the same thing. That causes worries. Okay, that causes you to feel depressed. That causes you to be anxious. Okay, also begin to focus on positive things in your life that you can control. There's a serenity prayer that says, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. There are some things that you cannot control. And so if you cannot control it, you don't need to sit around and worry about it. What is it that you can control? You have to begin to keep stress under control by doing stuff like exercising, eating healthy, reading, trying relaxation techniques, okay? One thing that I find very useful and I often suggest to my clients and they come back and they tell me they enjoyed it, it's journaling. So it's writing things down. I don't know if we have any biblical scholars here, but when you read books like the Book of Psalms, it's David talking over and over and over, pouring out his heart about the issues that he's gone through. You see, there's something about cleansing, there's something about expression, there's something about getting things out of your system when you write about it. And so I encourage you, any of you, if you're experiencing any type of depression, anxiety, or whatever, to put it in writing. Just write. It's a good way of getting things out of your system. Talk about your experiences and feelings to loved ones and friends. And again, this could be through journaling. We tend to keep things bottled up inside. I'll give you a quick joke. I remember when I was 17, 18, I asked a young lady out and she told me no. And that got me so upset. I was kind of saddened for days. And then I asked my best friend who was 17 as well. I said to him, I said, Kev, I said, Have you ever asked a girl out and she said no? And he said, man, that happens all the time. You know, by me opening up to him and him telling me that it happens all the time, that made me feel totally different. Because for the first time, I realized that, Richard, you are not alone in this. Well, you see, this is why it's important for us to open up and talk about our experiences. Because if we keep things bottled up, we suffer because we think we're the only one who's going through it. We think that we're the only one who has to carry around this pain. But when we share, when we talk about it with other people, it allows us to, first of all, get it out of the system. But secondly, it allows us to realize that we are not alone. Connect with others, okay? Connect with others who may be experiencing stress. Again, talk to people and people will talk to you. Shanda, I don't know if you remember a couple of years ago when I was doing the circumcision study. And the circumcision study was a national study that we did to find out about persons' attitudes towards male circumcision. And there were so many young men who were experiencing issues with circumcision. And the thing is that when we put them in groups and they had an opportunity to talk about it, okay, the thing was that that was a remarkable change for them. Because again, sometimes when you're stressed out about something and you connect with other people who are going through the same thing, you can help each other to work through stuff. So don't be ashamed if you're experiencing a certain feeling, talk about it. And then finally, take time to renew your spirit. And what do I mean by renewing your spirit? It's like being able to rest. It's like being able to be creative. It's like being able to have fun. So ask yourself, what is it that you're passionate about? What is it that you enjoy doing? What is it that brings laughter to you? Many of you are too young to know about ring plays and jackstones and playing cards all summer long and stuff like that. And over the last 18 months, I've introduced my kids and my nieces and nephew to the world of yesteryear. You know, I graduated back in 1977 from high school, okay? And so that's a generation ago. But the thing is that I've introduced these young folks to activities that we got involved in pre-technology, when there weren't so many options, when there weren't so many television programs that you could watch, when there was only ZNS, and ZNS came on at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. How did we keep ourselves occupied? There were fun activities. And so I want to encourage all of you that when you're feeling a little anxious, when you're feeling a little nervous, when you're feeling a little depressed, what I want you to do is I want you to think about, what is it that you're passionate about? What is it that you can do to have fun? What is it that makes you laugh? What is it that brings joy to your life? And the final statement that I want to say is, if you're interested in finding out what is it that you're passionate about, I want you to ask this question. If someone gave you $1 million and you did not have to work for the rest of your life, what would you wake up to do on a daily basis? That is the thing that you're passionate about, the thing that you would devote your life to if you didn't have to work a regular job. So I want you guys to focus and identify, what are you passionate about? And that is what I want you to get into when you feel that the world is closing down on you and you just can't take any more of this COVID-19 experience. And with that, Shanda, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Adderley. I really appreciate you being here and taking time out of your busy schedule. I've seen you on tens and tens of flyers, so it's good to see that you are making your rounds and you would have considered us this evening. I'm so appreciative. So one of the take-home points for me, if we were all listening, we would see that there were some overlapping points as relates to finding a safe space. We have been safe spaces for our students and our organization members and our friends, but we have to now find safe spaces, and support systems is very important as a way to tame our anxiety and our stresses. We mentioned about keeping stresses under control, or stressors rather, by meditation and positive affirmations, and just practicing or engaging in self-care techniques. And however that looks for you, it looks different for many different people. So we want to say thank you again, Dr. Adderley. And again, youth leaders, take time to take care of you. Know so you can prevent burnout, so that you can be the best you for not only yourself, but for your young people that you are of service to. We all have one thing in common. Dr. Ali would have spoken about being passionate and having purpose. And one thing that we all have in common on this presentation or on this workshop is that we are of service to young people. We are passionate about young people, or we would not be here on a Monday evening. So we must consider this and take into consideration that we are to be the best us in order to be the best for them and to them. So I just want to say thank you again, Dr. Adderley. I am so honored to know you. And now we're going to welcome Dr. Gina Archer. She is a representative of the Ministry of Health, and she is the Assistant Hospital Administrator that is going to speak to us on the COVID vaccine, the COVID shield, the AstraZeneca that we all have been hearing about for so many months. It's no pressure, everyone. It's a personal choice. There is no force here. I am fully vaccinated 11 weeks later, and I am still standing. I haven't turned into a zombie. All is well. So I want to encourage you all to just, listen up. If you have any questions, this is a safe place for you to ask them and express your concerns. So Dr. Archer, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so very much for inviting me to come and speak with you today. I apologize, I'm a bit hoarse right now. I've been doing a lot of talking over the last 2 weeks, but it really indeed is a pleasure to come and speak to you all. I'm going to just share my screen now with you, and you can let me know if you see it.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, it's visible?
Yes.
No.
Yes, ma'am. We can see it. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm just gonna see if I can move you all up top. Okay, there we go. Some of the objectives that I want to touch on this afternoon, of course, is the COVID-19 vaccines. I want to talk to you all a bit about the clinical trials that all of these vaccines that are on market now had to go through. I know you would have heard about the COVAX facility, but I want to touch on that as well. The deployment planning, how we distributed the plan that we used to distribute the vaccines throughout the community, and a little bit on the regulatory arm and our preparedness in that regard. So what is a vaccine? Well, a vaccine is a product that stimulates a person's immune system to produce immunity to a specific disease, protecting the person from that one disease. That is the definition that the CDC has for the vaccine. And I think it's the most appropriate one because it's broad and all-encompassing. Well, vaccines have been used to save millions of lives every year. And vaccines are not new to us. Vaccines help to prevent diseases, and they work. They've proven that they work. And some of the vaccines that you would have had given as a child and later on in life would have been the polio vaccine, the measles, diphtheria vaccines. A lot of you are familiar with the tetanus vaccine as well, and pneumonia. And these vaccines have been very beneficial in curbing disease and hospitalizations. Some of the vaccines out there right now in use or in circulation in other parts of the world and here you'd be familiar with, such as the University of Oxford AstraZeneca, the Pfizer BioNTech, the Johnson & Johnson, the Covaxin, the Moderna, etc. What's important to note is that the Pfizer, the Johnson & Johnson, and Moderna, they're all US companies, okay? So these are pretty much US vaccines. So because we're very close to the United States, you would be more familiar with those names as opposed to maybe the Sputnik 5 or the Sinopharm or the Sinovac. but these vaccines are in circulation and being used in other parts of the world. Here in the Bahamas, we are using the the AstraZeneca vaccine. And please be minded that all of the COVID-19 vaccines have been shown to be safe and effective in preventing moderate to severe COVID-19 disease and hospitalizations. So in other words, when you are vaccinated, it does not mean that you will never get COVID. It means that in the unlikely or unfortunate event that you do get COVID, you know for certain, you have that assurity that you will not experience moderate to severe disease, and you will not be hospitalized because of the illness that it will cause in your body. So that is an assurance that you have with the vaccines. And on a personal note, I do know of 2 persons personally that have gotten COVID after they've had it was their first dose of the vaccine. And one, he went out, he was bar hopping, and he didn't even know he had it. His friends who he had socialized with, they were ill, and they notified him, and he got tested, and he found out that he had it. So I was curious. I asked him, how are you feeling? What are your symptoms? He said he just had the sniffles, and that was it. He had no clue until he was tested. And another person, a female actually, her secretary was very ill, and she was paranoid. She thought the secretary had COVID and may have passed it on to her. So she went out and she got it tested, and she was positive. Her secretary was not positive for COVID, so she still doesn't know where she got it, but she had it, and her 2-year-old daughter had it. And when I spoke to her, she says she has a history of sinuses. She only had a runny nose. So had it not been for her getting tested, she would not even have known that she was infected. So the vaccines are very beneficial. They really have shown and proven themselves effective in keeping you generally safe and healthy, in the sense that you won't experience a moderate to severe type of infection. And vaccines are currently still under development. There are lots of them under development. And the World Health Organization, they have a tracker tool. And what this tool does is it follows the candidate COVID-19 vaccines from preclinical trial to clinical development. And what they do is they capture and compile a lot of detailed information on these vaccines, and they make it public. And their tracker is updated twice a week, Tuesday and Friday. As of Tuesday, the first day of this month, you would notice that there was 185 vaccines in the preclinical development, and 102 vaccines already in clinical development. And I put this slide there to show you that studies are ongoing. Persons are still looking for the best vaccine, even though we have a good number of safe and efficacious vaccines now in circulation. Studies are still going on. Researchers are still working very hard and diligently at creating new vaccines. Now, when we look at the vaccine development, researchers have 2 main goals. Is the vaccine safe? And is the vaccine efficacious? When they talk about safety, they have listed that as their utmost priority. The vaccine must be safe. We cannot offer it to you if it has not been shown and proven to be safe. That separates the layman from the scientist, so to speak. Scientists go on data and research. They don't just speak anecdotally. They're clinically driven, and everything is factual. So Their main priority is safety. And what they want to do, or what they try to do, is ensure that these vaccines don't cause any adverse events or death. They also look at efficacy, and efficacy in two regards. Does this vaccine protect against disease? And does this vaccine protect against infection? The priority was given to the first option. They're looking mainly to see, does this protect against disease? So if you do get the disease, does it offer some degree of protection for you? You hear a lot about the clinical trials, and persons were nervous and uneasy when the first few vaccines entered the marketplace. They felt as though the vaccines were rushed. They felt as though vaccines skipped through some of the clinical trials. The data has shown that all of the vaccines have gone through all of the clinical trials. A lot of the vaccine platforms that the researchers used to develop these vaccines are not new. I'll touch on that a little later. For example, the AstraZeneca, the Johnson & Johnson, they use what I like to call old school technology. These types of vaccine platforms have been used in the past. The hepatitis vaccine uses that same kind of platform. The newer ones, of course, are like the the Pfizer and the Moderna. But that technology has been around for a while as well, because they researched that when they were looking for a vaccine for the Ebola disease. And I'm sure you're familiar about Ebola. Well, the clinical trials, the preclinical trials start with testing in animals, and researchers use mice. That's the most common animal they use in testing the vaccines. And what they do is that they inject these mice with the vaccine, and they monitor for any kind of effects. They're looking to see if the animal remains safe and healthy. They want to make sure it didn't die on us. And they also test the mouse, or the mice rather, to see whether they have developed antibodies, because that's the whole premise behind vaccines. Vaccines stimulate your body to create antibodies against a part of the virus. So they look for antibodies in these mice. And then what they do, they challenge the mice with the virus to see whether or not there's a protective effect, to see whether or not the antibodies were sufficient to ward off severe infection. If all goes well, that vaccine now enters into phase 1 of the clinical trials. And in phase 1, the researchers use human subjects. The sample sizes are very small, and they use healthy individuals in phase 1. What they're looking for, again, are two things: side effects. They're constantly checking to ensure that these vaccines are safe. They monitor for any kind of side effect. They're also looking to see what the upper limit and the lower limit of the dosing will be, because they know if they give you too much of the vaccine, you would experience more severe adverse reactions. They know also if they give you too little of the vaccine, it won't be effective at all. So they're looking for like the sweet spot in phase 1. When they have determined that, then the vaccine goes into phase 2 of the clinical trials. And this phase 2, they utilize a larger population. And what they're trying to do now is match the population that they have enrolled in the clinical trial with what they see in the general population. So they try to match the demographics, the age, the gender, the race. In other words, they're not just trying this vaccine on 40-year-old white men. They're trying to match the demographic. Let's enroll Blacks, let's enroll Asians, male, female, older persons, younger persons. They tested it in adults, So those younger persons, of course, would have been 18 and older. They also enrolled persons with and without disease. And when I say with and without disease, I'm talking about hypertension, diabetes, cancer, asthma. So they've enrolled persons in all of those categories in this phase 1. They're constantly looking for side effects, and they're looking to see if the dose is also still effective. If all goes well, these vaccines, progress now to phase 3 of the clinical trials. Of course, the study group is much larger. They go with groups 1,000 and larger. I think with the AstraZeneca, their study population, their target was 52,000 persons in phase 3. Again, they match the demographics, and they're also monitoring for the effectivity of the vaccine. Is it effective? What's interesting with the studies conducted with the Pfizer and the AstraZeneca, Pfizer was looking for signs and symptoms of infection in their study population. AstraZeneca, they were calling persons in periodically and swabbing them. So AstraZeneca really was able to say that their vaccine was more effective in reducing the transmissibility of the virus because they were swabbing and physically looking for that virus. Whereas Pfizer, they were just looking for symptoms. And as you know, persons who are vaccinated, who do end up getting COVID, can be asymptomatic. You see? And then in phase 3, if all of the safety and efficacy standards have been met, then these companies now apply for what you all are familiar with, an emergency use authorization. Okay? And that doesn't mean that the research stops there. It doesn't. They still have peer-reviewed journals, and they still have a responsibility to support the pharmacovigilance aspect of the study, where they continue to monitor their study subjects over a period of time. Now, some of the vaccine platforms, I don't want to get too technical, but the Pfizer and Moderna, they share a similar type of platform. These are the two vaccines that you typically hear about. Persons say, oh, this is new technology. It's not new technology, but we have not had a vaccine released to such an extent before using this kind of platform. And what they have done is, if you look at the picture, the illustration, you will see the coronavirus and the red receptors around it. That's the spike protein or S protein. That is common to all coronaviruses. And that spike protein is what attaches to your cell and allows the virus to enter your cell. So it only made sense for vaccines to target this receptor. And that's pretty much what the target is. So with the Pfizer and Moderna, they utilize messenger RNA technology. And what the researchers have done is they have created, so to speak, mRNA that codes for that spike protein. So when they bundle that into a vaccine and inject you, your body produces the spike protein. Of course, this is foreign to your body. So your body attacks it and develops antibodies for it. And that's how you develop immunity. The AstraZeneca vaccine and the Johnson & Johnson, their platform is very similar. They use something called recombinant therapy. Well, what is that? Well, they take the DNA from the spike protein they combine it with the virus that causes the flu in chimpanzees, because that virus can infect our cells, but that does not make us sick. The chimpanzees get the flu, we don't get the flu. So they combine that, put that in a vaccine, so to speak, and inject that into your body. That vaccine platform also stimulates your body to create antibodies against the spike protein, because your body doesn't recognize that as being natural. And that is how you develop immunity. And the immunity develops over time. You don't get vaccinated today and you're immune tonight. It takes time. That's why they say you're fully vaccinated 2 weeks after your second dose. But what can you expect when you do decide that, look, I'm interested in getting that kind of protection. I'm satisfied. I've done my reading. I've done my research. I feel comfortable that this vaccine is for me and it could provide me with a level of immunity. So if I get the vaccine, what's going to happen to me after? Well, in terms of the injection site, you're getting a needle in your arm. So some of us will experience pain, redness, swelling. As it relates to the rest of your body, some of you may experience tiredness, headache, muscle pain, chills, fever, nausea. And persons have experienced these things. And for those of you who are parents, and not even just parents, but those who were not really like me, but brave enough to watch your child get vaccinated, you will see them cry when they get stuck because it's a needle. Some of the children, babies, when they're home, they're a little fussy. Some have a fever. The next day, they're back to normal. That happens with some of us as adults. I know when I got the vaccine, my arm did hurt. I did have a headache and I did feel tired, but that was the extent of it. When my daughter was vaccinated, she experienced nothing. When my nearly 80-year-old mother got vaccinated, she felt nothing. I said, Mom, did it make you tired? She's like, oh, I sleep all the time anyway. I didn't even notice, But I think I'm the only one out of my family that experienced something. So, but this is what you can expect to happen, to possibly happen. And I know some of you have friends who are vaccinated already. And I know, I'm hoping you would have spoken to them to see what their experience has been. Now, as I touched on earlier, it takes time for your body to develop immunity, okay? And people are considered vaccinated 2 weeks after their second shot. And I'm referring to the Pfizer-BioNTech, the Moderna, or what we're using here in the Bahamas, the AstraZeneca. Those vaccines require 2 shots, and you're considered fully vaccinated after 2 weeks, really, after your second shot. And with the Johnson & Johnson, that's only 1 week. So you're considered fully vaccinated after you've had the one and only shot of that particular one. Now, what you need to be cognizant of is that it is still important to follow the safety protocols, even though you're vaccinated. Because as I would have mentioned to you earlier, you can still possibly get COVID, but you may be asymptomatic and don't know it. But I'm sure you don't want to be the one responsible for passing it on to somebody else. So until we get pretty much most persons vaccinated, it's very important to wear your mask when you're going out in public and when you're not around other persons who are vaccinated. Continue to wash your hands because you don't want to get infected with the COVID virus. Personal hygiene is important. Social distancing is very important. must always wear clean clothing because germs, viruses, bacteria get on our clothing. We could make ourselves sick, believe it or not, that way as well. And still try to limit contact with members who are outside of your household. Because at the end of the day, you don't know. You don't know. The government has done a phenomenal job thus far in delivering vaccines to persons who want them. There are a number of sites that are open. Usually there are 5 sites that are open constantly: Church of God, Loyola, St. Anselm's, Bahama, and Kendall G. L. Isaac's gym. Those 2 are just closed. But to date, well, as of Sunday, 79,000 persons would have been vaccinated, and 25,000 persons would have received their 2 doses. So they're fully vaccinated. If you consider that we have a population of nearly 400,000 persons, and as of Sunday, we only have 25,000 persons fully vaccinated, we got some ways to go. We got some ways to go. So that's why I say it's very important for forums such as this, and for persons to go out there, consult with other persons who they respect, visit trusted sources for information. Don't go with the WhatsApp messages that go around and you're gonna get magnetized. I mean, I guess I wouldn't be able to walk through my kitchen or walk down the street. It's just a lot of this type of propaganda going around. It's just, I don't know, it's just unbelievable. And some of our people believe it. It's mind blowing. But seek your information from trusted sources. The Office of the Prime Minister is there. World Health Organization is there. We live very close to the United States and we're very US centric. So if that's the case, the CDC is there. But it's very important that you consult or look to trusted sources to get your information. Otherwise, someone's gonna take you down a rabbit hole. And the next thing you know, you're the one sick in hospital with something that could have been prevented. Well, the campaign has gone to the entire Family Islands and also the Keys. And this week, starting, well, actually last week, Thursday, they went back to Abaco. But as of today, a team went out to Maikal and Andros. And tomorrow they're going into Exuma, can't remember wherever else. But for the remaining of this week, they will be covering the entire Bahamas again to deliver 2nd doses. And also those who want 1st doses, they're giving them that opportunity as well, should they opt to have it. Now, this slide, I put this in here just so you can have an appreciation for the larger countries and how many doses of vaccines they were able to procure. Right now, we're in a global race. Everything is very competitive with vaccines. You know, the United States, they're at a point now where they're satisfied. You know, Biden says he has enough vaccines for any American who wants one. They have a surplus of vaccine now. They're at the point now where they're donating, thankfully. But everyone, most of the countries are in a rat race. India is in a serious situation right now. Canada has still been looking to see if they can borrow vaccines. So imagine itty bitty us with 400,000. You know, we often tend to get overlooked, and the larger countries get the benefit of the supply. So where does that leave us? Thankfully, there's the COVAX facility. And what is COVAX? Well, it's a collaboration between Gavi, CEPI, and the World Health Organization. And what they are trying to do is to ensure that people in all corners of the world will get access to the COVID-19 vaccine, regardless of wealth. You know, this country is not as wealthy as the United States or Canada. So we need someone to bargain on our behalf. COVAX facility also supports research and development and the manufacturing of a wide range of vaccine candidates and also negotiating prices. Because if we were to step out there on our own, we don't form a large enough bargaining block, you know? So platforms such as COVAX, you know, they're very instrumental to us in terms of negotiating pricing. And their aim, of course, is to be able to deliver 2 billion vaccine doses by the end of 2021. And, you know, the government has paid into the COVAX facility for 20,000 vaccines to cover 20,000% of the population, which is approximately 80,000 people. So we're almost there. You know, if we already have, what was it? There you go, 79,000 vaccine doses already delivered. But we were also the recipients of the Covishield vaccine from the government, from India. But just to put it out there for you, get vaccinated while we have vaccines. The need for regulatory preparedness was very important because if we didn't have processes in place, any substandard or falsified vaccine would have entered this market. And the government, we've already been warned by Interpol that there are falsified vaccines circulating out there, especially in Brazil. And these vaccine companies, they have their protocols. For example, the vials that we draw the vaccines out of, you have to use a marker and mark out that label, because what they've noticed happening is unscrupulous persons, they would steal those empty vials, fill them with water, sodium chloride, God knows what, and try to sell it to other countries. So we had to tighten up because we knew that COVAX would not only be a distributor for us. We had to make sure whatever body that we looked at to procure from. Like I said, you have these bilateral agreements where countries donate vaccines to you. How do we know they're safe? Okay, we may want to go out there and approach providers for vaccines. You know, how do we know their vaccines are safe? So we had to tighten up our whole regulatory process, and that is what we've done, and I'm quite proud of it. There's a body, the Caribbean Public Health Agency, CARPHA. The CRS is a body under CARPHA, and CRS stands for Caribbean Regulatory System. And what they do, they've been charged with the responsibility for reviewing and recommending eligible vaccines for market authorization or importation by CARPHA member states, such as us. So they serve more as a verification intermediary for us. So if a third-party provider wants to sell us or even donate a vaccine to us, first we need to know that that vaccine has an emergency use authorization, or the WHO calls theirs EUL, an emergency use listing. And we only recognize about 8 stringent regulatory authorities: the United States, Japan, the European Union, Health Canada, and I can't remember the others, but we only recognize about 8 of them. So once they have given the vaccine an emergency use authorization, or an EUL, we say, okay, that's the first step. Then we require that distributor forward the drug or vaccine dossier to the CRS. And what the CRS does, they do a verification of that dossier to make sure that the vaccine that's being offered to us is the same vaccine that would have gotten an emergency use authorization or an emergency use listing. Trust me, the ministry has had quite a good number of persons who have offered us vaccines. But what we do know is that these manufacturers, while we are in a pandemic, have said they only do business with governments. So that's rooted out some of the persons. And because of the process that we have in place, where they need to send the information to the CRS, a lot of them are unable to do it. Why? Maybe because they're not legitimate. And also, these manufacturers, they're not going to share their technology with you. They're not going to give you their confidential information. So that's the safeguards that we have in place. And most of the vaccine, all of the vaccines that have come through the COVAX facility, we've registered them in country. They were able to produce the information for us. And when we register them, we give them what you call a vaccine approval certificate. And this is what customs gets to allow vaccines in country. So if someone else is offering you a COVID-19 vaccine that is not coming through the government, beware, beware. And okay, winding down now, just to touch on the strategic plan. The Ministry of Health has created a national strategic plan for the COVID-19 vaccine and its rollout. There are about 9 work streams that feed into, that have fed rather, into the strategic plan. I chair the logistics and cold chain subcommittee, as well as the regulatory arm. And as you can imagine, the logistics is still ongoing. What came out of the strategic plan? Well, the prioritization, targeting, and surveillance of the population. We looked to see where the priority populations were at first, where the elderly, where the frontline providers. We did a size estimation. How many persons are in that group? Let's locate them. Are they in New Providence, Abaco, Grand Bahama, etc.? And then we developed a distribution plan. A lot of you are familiar with the phase rollout that we took. You know, the first phase, vaccines were offered to healthcare workers, first responders, the elderly and their care providers. And then we moved on to those with who are disabled and had comorbidities. Right now, we're in phase 3. So whoever wants a vaccine can get a vaccine. And with that, I conclude my presentation and will welcome any questions that you may have.
Okay, great job, Dr. Archer. I'll go first because I have access to the chat. I'm going to read 2 of the questions, of course, without saying who's from. So is the vaccine recommended for persons who has cancer or has had cancer, so I guess in remission?
Yes, the vaccine is recommended because you have to remember now, persons with cancer or other comorbidities, they're in the high risk group because they tend to have poorer outcomes if they were to contract COVID. So they're most certainly recommended to take the vaccine.
Okay, and then do you recommend taking a drug to prevent or lessen the symptoms that can possibly occur after being vaccinated?
To be on the safe side, if you feel you're one of those persons who may experience a side effect, and then nobody really knows that, you can take paracetamol or Tylenol. And you can take it, if you want, you can take it prior to the vaccination, or if you want to wait and see if you're feeling any side effects, you can still take them after the vaccine. I'm a pharmacist, so it's not recommended to take more than 4 grams a day.
Okay, should pregnant women take the vaccine?
Yes, pregnant women are being encouraged to take the vaccine because recent studies have shown also that pregnant women who contract COVID have poorer outcomes than those women who are not pregnant. So yes, they are encouraged. Now, I will always say, always speak with your healthcare provider. It's always good to have the conversation, and then you feel more empowered when you go in there and you're more comfortable when you go in there. But yes, the recommendations now are for pregnant women to receive the vaccine.
Okay, what about children under the age of 18? Are youth under 18 recommended to take the vaccine now?
The vaccine that we're using in country now is the AstraZeneca, and no, it is not recommended for persons under 18 to take that. Until the research shows us otherwise, then it's 18 and over. However, the Pfizer vaccine, based on the research that was conducted on that vaccine, they're now recommending persons 12 to 17, it's safe for them to take it. But then again, that's also still controversial, in the United States. I've heard some of the debates on it because they say children usually have better outcomes, But in terms of reducing transmissibility, because even though they have better outcomes, they can still infect you. So, but I know there have been some ongoing debates with that in the United States. But if we're looking at the data and the science behind it, the research has suggested that yes, it is safe for children, adolescents, 12 to 17, to take the Pfizer vaccine, COVID-19 vaccine.
Okay, and this is not a question, but a query. It says, after analysis of the vaccine initiative, why is the Bahamas, so still a question, using a vaccine that is not approved? And as a young person, what can be an initiative to encourage other young individuals to take the AstraZeneca vaccine?
Okay, when they say
Kind of loaded, but
the vaccine is not approved, I don't understand. The vaccine is approved.
yeah,
I think because, like I said, we're so US centric, they want to know why a vaccine outside of a US company
FDA perhaps,
is
right?
not being used in America. But I can tell you, America bought it. America promotes America. Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, or J&J, Johnson & Johnson, they're US companies, okay? They're gonna promote their vaccines. They have sufficient vaccines. They don't need to go through the giving an EUA for the Sputnik, the Sinopharm, the Sinovac. We have 102 in preclinical development. When they come out, the United States is not interested, but the United States is just one regulatory authority. Like I said, they have 8 stringent ones that the globe recognizes. You have Health Canada, you have the European Union, you have the MHRA, Medicines and Health Products Research. That's the one in England. There are a number of other regulatory authorities, and they approve vaccines for use in country. We are not a regulatory authority. So who do we rely on? We look to the World Health Organization. No vaccine is going to come in this country without a WHO EUL. Like I said, the WHO calls theirs EUL. They give it an emergency use listing. That's their terminology. The vaccines that we have recognized and that CARPHA has recommended have all gotten an EUL. The United States is not interested in looking outside of their 3. And AstraZeneca is, what is it, Swedish? Well, the vaccine was made by a Swedish company and England. And they were the first vaccines on the market. The UK was vaccinating before the United States. While Trump was in a puff saying, hurry up and get the vaccine, the Pfizer, give it an EUA already. The European Union was already using it and still continue to use it. And so are other brothers and sisters in the Caribbean. They're using it as well. But the vaccines are approved.
Thank you for answering that question. I think that would kind of disseminate a lot of the myths that have been traveling and circulating throughout our country.
Yeah.
Another question is, should summer camps remain virtual or go hybrid in light of no vaccine for youth under the age of 18? What are your thoughts?
What are my thoughts? I am so paranoid of COVID. I only prefer to socialize or be near persons who are vaccinated. If they're not vaccinated, follow the safety protocols. If summer schools can function through adhering to the safety protocols, then go ahead, because kids love to be with children. But if you can't safely adhere to the protocols, it's not even worth the risk, really. That's my view.
Right. So I hear you saying basically it depends on the space that you have. If you can sustain the 3 feet to 6 feet, but specifically or preferably 6 feet at this time, distance, and find a way to still accommodate them, then you could possibly go ahead.
Right.
Okay.
That's my view.
Okay, not a problem. Any other questions for Dr. Archer? How long would the vaccine be available for persons, or is there a time frame limit?
As long as we are in a pandemic and as long as COVID is with us, I am convinced, I cannot speak for them, I am convinced the government will do all that it can to make the vaccines available. Same as with the measles, mumps, rubella, polio vaccines, they're all still available. We don't even know when last we've seen polio, but those vaccines are still available to be had.
Are there any more questions? Before anyone types, I just want to say thank you so much. I appreciate, and we appreciate as the Division of Youth and the Ministry at large, you taking the time out in spite of your hoarse voice and making your rounds. We so appreciate it, and it was very thorough. I was very engaged. It was an awesome session, and I learned a lot, so I can now continue my personal campaign of getting everyone vaccinated. No pressure, y'all, but pressure. You know, it was an amazing job. Thank you so much. I see another question here. It said, is a person who is vaccinated for life? That's a good question.
Well, we can only, not we, researchers can only speak for as long as the vaccine has been studied. If they study the vaccine for 5 years and they see that their study population is still exhibiting immunity, they will tell you the vaccine is good for 5 years. If they study it for 10 years, they will be able to say that as well. But right now, the main focus is on saving lives and providing protection. If it's limited, how limited that protection is, we cannot say. Because if those of you, again, with parents, with children, older children, maybe 17, 18, 16, 17, 18, initially, when you got your children vaccinated against, chicken pox, the pediatrician would have told you some years later, we now know that you need a booster, because the studies don't end. They don't end, they're ongoing. But at the time, they thought the chickenpox vaccine was sufficient. But over time, they said, nope, you need another varicella vaccine, and they call it a booster. So whether we will need a booster, time will tell.
Okay, amazing. So this is the last question. Can you take 2 different vaccines?
It has happened. It's not recommended. And why I say it has happened, that's because there's a supply and a demand issue. If your country only brings in Pfizer, right, and you're out of Pfizer and they bring in Moderna, the goal is to get you covered, to get you fully covered. because all pandemonium breaks out when you're not protected and you have this large outbreak and it causes issues and life. So it has happened, intermixing, but it's not recommended.
Okay, that is all of the questions that we will be taking. So I just want to say again, thank you so, so much on behalf of the Division of Youth for taking this time out. It was an amazing presentation, like I said, very repetitive, like I said again, but it was amazing and I really enjoyed it. And from the questions and the engagement in the chat, I can tell that our youth leaders and youth organizations represented enjoyed it as well. So I just want to say thank you so much again, Dr. Archer. We
Well,
appreciate your time.
much. And again, I encourage persons to get your information through trusted sources. Don't mind the grapevine, do your own research because you have to be comfortable. When we got vaccinated as a child, our parents did that. We didn't decide. Now you have to make the decision. Our parents decided for us. We don't have polio, we don't have measles, smallpox, none of that. They decided for us. But now in this age of information, seek your facts from trusted sources so that you're comfortable with whatever decision that you make. And thanks again for having me. It really was a pleasure.
Thank you for having us. It was a pleasure to work with you and to have you present. So I'm just going to bring on the head of our Division of Youth at the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Culture, Mrs. Sandina Lilly, to bring greetings.
Good evening to all. Can you all hear me clearly, Shanda?
Yes, we
Good
can. I
evening
can hear you.
to all.
Yes,
Thank
we
you
can.
so much. Let's all give Shanda some virtual snaps.
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
Claps. Let's all give Shanda some virtual snaps and claps for putting together an excellent seminar workshop for us this evening. It's something that we had talked about for a long while. And I'm so honored, just to be a part of such an amazing team with very capable professionals who take their jobs super seriously. And always, whether we're putting on an award show or something as serious as the COVID-19 pandemic, we're able to step up to the plate. And that is just a very small testament to the amazing professionals with whom I get to work every day. And it is such an honor to be able to work with these persons who absolutely enjoy what they do. And to be here this evening with all of our youth leaders. Give yourselves some virtual snaps and claps. Whenever we call on you all, you are always there as great partners and collaborators. And so we just want to, again, thank you all so much for being here. And to our presenters, Dr. Adderley and Dr. Archer, the information has been a breath of fresh air in so much, rabbit holes that we can go down on social media and YouTube and wherever else. It's just good to be able to sit and to soak in all of this credible information. You all are our trusted sources with our Ministry of Health. So we are just so excited on behalf of our minister, the Honorable Iram Lewis, and our Permanent Secretary, Eugene Poitier, and everyone at the ministry and the Division of Youth. We say such a huge thank you to Dr. Adderley and to Dr. Archer. And now just a word to our youth leaders. A very, very special note. I think it was Jason Sanders who asked, how can they be involved? How can youth leaders be involved in an initiative centered around vaccinations? And so we want you all to pay attention to your emails and to stay tuned as the Division of Youth is assisting the Office of the Prime Minister and the Vaccination Committee with rolling out a youth vaccination effort. So we want you all to pay very special attention to your emails and to social media, our social media handles on the Division of Youth 242 on Facebook and Instagram. We're going to be asking you all to join the vaccination effort. You all will be able to be vaccinated along with your young people who are over the age of 18, while we still have the AstraZeneca vaccine and any other vaccines that come along, if it is able to be given to persons under the age of 18, we will absolutely let you know. We will have our vaccine days. They'll have a lot of fun. They'll have TikTok challenges. We are so pleased that the Division of Youth, that 11 of our 13 team members have been fully vaccinated. So we are leading by example by letting our population and our partners and our stakeholders, like you know, that we're not just preaching the message of vaccination, but we have actually walked that road. We are all fully vaccinated. And so we want you to please stay tuned to our social media channels so that we can let you all know more information on our youth vaccination effort. We're excited about it. We want to reach our immunity levels, if we can, in our country, so that we can continue to open up. The great news came from our Prime Minister, the Right Honorable Dr. Hubert Minnis, today, that curfews are extended. We know that he also indicated that there will be a vaccination day and that there'll be so many other perks for persons who are vaccinated. So we want to just encourage each of you who haven't been vaccinated as yet. It's your choice. There's no pressure to choose to be vaccinated or not. If you want to continue to do your research, we want it to be your choice, and to stay in touch with us so that you can find out how to encourage your young people in your organizations. You have lots of influence and lots of power, so that we want you all to have the best, most accurate information. That is why an initiative like what we put on this evening is so vital and so important, because you were able to get the information this evening straight from the horse's mouth, as the saying goes. So you're able now to speak with authority, and you're able to be equipped and to point people in the right direction. And so with that, again, much thanks to our capable and able youth officer, Shanda Roberts, who led this session for us this evening. And we are so happy to have some of our other youth officers joining us. We have one of our most senior team members, Ingrid Says DeVoe. Maybe she'll give us a wave. We also have another youth officer, Kelly Brathwaite. And I don't know if I'm missing anyone else who is tuned in, but we are just so happy to be here and to host you all. You know, we like to get together with you all. And hopefully when Youth Month comes up, we're going to be able to get together in an even more open forum. And so with that, I just want to say again, another huge thank you on behalf of our minister, our permanent secretary, all of the staff at the ministry, and especially your friends here at the Division of Youth. Thank you so much for joining. And once again, Shanda, a great job.
Thank you everyone for joining. Just to piggyback on Mrs. Neely, thank you so much for taking the time out. And Kenneth Fraser is also here with us, another youth officer, and Miss Lauren Ashley Hasty, and Miss Alexia Rule, I'm sorry, was here earlier. So thank you all for joining us. You know, teamwork makes the dream work, and I am grateful for your continued support, meaning all of you youth leaders and youth organization representatives. I appreciate you all, and go and spread the news for those who have been asking. Yes, we can work on a certificate participating in the session 1 and 2. There is a recording for those that have been asking for a copy of the presentations, okay? So we can forward those to you at the end, probably tomorrow at our earliest convenience, tomorrow afternoon sometime. We'll get the recordings to you all. And of course, you registered for the workshop, so we already have the names of those that joined us. So the certificates will be presented to you or sent to you via email. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you again. Have an amazing evening, everyone. Bye-bye.